Heroes and sidekicks. I'm excited about this. I have to be honest with you, I felt last night a little bit of anxiety knowing today was my turn. And I speak to the youth every week, so speaking is nothing new, but I obviously don't do it from this stage. And I think I have known what I'm going to speak on today for probably 4 months. I think that's probably the bigger thing. I think Pastor Evan approached me about 4 months ago and said, hey, we're doing this summer series, Heroes and Sidekicks, want you to be a part of it? And I ended up doing the last week, and this is the 10th and final week of Heroes and Sidekicks. So I've had 4 months to stew on this, to prepare it, scratch it out, re-prepare it, scratch it back out, and re-prepare it. So that's what today is, but I'm so excited about it. Pastor Evan, of course, not here today, and I'm honored that he would pick me to speak in his stead. He, of course, is taking he and Emily's oldest son, Noah, to college down in Tulsa, and man, I am so excited for Noah. Like, I have this anxiousness for him inside of me. And I have this anxiousness for Haley, who's leaving today to go out to college. And I have this anxiousness for her. And I'm excited. And I keep telling them, hey, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And inside, I'm anxious, not that they're going to do it or that it's going to be okay, but that to see what God's going to use them to be. As if it was almost like my own children. It's exciting, how this is going to be. So those that don't know me, I'm Mike Sumner. Pastor Mike, as your youth might know me as. My wife, Kendra, and I are youth pastors downstairs that we speak during the second service to our youth every week. Like I said, I love it. That's the call of my life, I feel like, right now. It's not to speak to youth, but to speak to your youth. Those of you in here that you have kids that you send down every week and entrust with us, thank you, and I'm honored that you would do that. Heroes and Sidekicks. Joshua and Caleb is who we're going to talk about today. I think these two fit the mold perfect for hero and sidekick. This is it. Joshua is your ultimate, movie type hero. This dude is just one bad dude, right? Warrior, conqueror, leader, just led by God, listens to God. We don't really hear many faults of his. It's just, this is awesome. And then Caleb is just his right-hand man. Wherever you see Joshua, Caleb is right there behind him. Just a really cool, these are the guys. But I think in order to understand today's story, you got to kind of back up a little bit, right? And I'm going to back up even farther. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my family. So there's a number, 17,900, I want you to remember, because we're going to come back to that in a minute, okay? Kendra and I grew up in just outside of Chicago, Illinois. We met when we were 17 years old. So I guess you could say we were high school sweethearts. That sounds a little sappy for my liking, so I don't generally use that term, but we met as kids, right? We dated, and that went more serious at the time. I finished high school, went to Bible college, and after I finished Bible college, about 22 years old, I married Kendra. And about a year later, we had our first, and 18 months later, we had our second kid. 18 months later, we had our third kid, and I found myself 25 years old, working for a church full-time, loving it, having 3 kids, and being unbelievably broke. You might hear that and think, oh, you didn't have much money. No, you didn't hear me. I was broke. That number I gave you earlier, $17,900, that would be the peak salary I ever made in the decade I worked for that church. And you may think, oh, that was a long time ago. Man, that must have been so. It was 10 years ago. Right, not that long ago. Yes, we've had inflation, but still, $17,900, the most I ever made. So you're taking home a paycheck somewhere around $630 every 2 weeks. Not that I know that number imprinted on my brain. And during this time of having 3 small children that, I had a part in bringing to this earth, the best I could tell Ken and I talk about it is I probably had around $25,000 of bills every year that I had to pay. And if you're doing that math there in your seat, you don't have to be a mathematician to know that, you don't make enough money to get by. You could argue I was irresponsible to have 3 children making $17,900 a year. And that would be a good argument, right? But some of the benefits of doing this is I was forced to need God. I mean, absolutely forced. We were dirt poor. And as I finished Bible college, I realized right away, I need something to help supplement my income, or that pretty lady that you suckered into marry you, she's going to leave you. And so I went to trade school, and I became HVAC certified and became an electrician, and that was something I did on the side. But the church was very taxing, so there was not a lot of side time, right? I remember one particular day driving home from work in my Ford Ranger pickup truck that I had personally painted white racing stripes on. Personally, that's right, you heard it. I was making good decisions way back then, folks, that's right. And like, I knew I was low on gas, but I was pretty sure I was going to make it. And this came up in our staff meeting today, and like you said, we'll just stop and get gas. Well, I would have, except for I had no money. Like, the bank account was zero, right? Like now, Kendra and I kind of panicked, like, oh man, the bank account's low. But it's not been zero in a long time. In fact, I'm pretty sure at this time, it had a number in it. There was just a negative before it, which was a fairly regular thing that would happen to us. And some of you today, that would stress you out, but it didn't at the time because that's how we lived, right? We lived with a chance our bank account was going to be in the negatives, right? I was driving home. I get into our subdivision, and you hear that dreaded like clunk, clunk. Oh no, it's like, come on, old girl, come on, get me home, come on. And it began to clunk and clunk and clunk until it turns off and you coast to a stop. And I'm about 5 blocks from home. It's one of those times you just sit there and it's like, do I cry or do I laugh right now? Like, is this incredibly sad? Do I lay my head on my steering wheel and just cry myself to sleep tonight? Or do I just, laugh at like, guess I'm walking home. Not sure I'm getting to work tomorrow either. That's where I was at. Kind of somewhere in between. So you laugh so you don't cry as a grown 25-year-old man sitting on the side of the road. So I get up, I walk home and kind of go upstairs, and Kendra greets me, hey, your dad stopped by today, which is unusual because my dad just didn't stop by. He's not a stop-by person. And he said he wanted to give you a gas card. For some reason, somebody gave it to him. He's not using it, which anybody can use gas cards. This is 10 years ago. We didn't have electrical vehicles yet, right? So he gives me this gas card, and it was like, my dad has never since given me a gas card. He had never to that point given me a gas card. And like, you can think, oh, that's cool, God gave you gas. To me, that was a God-sized miracle that I didn't just hope to have, I needed it. And God came through. I thought of another time where like, I went home and opened my fridge, and it was absolutely empty. Now, you might hear me, it's like, oh, there's not enough to make a meal. That's not what I said. It was empty. Like, we didn't have, like, the condiments that, like, houses just come with, right? Like, you go to your parents' house and, like, there's some ranch in there, right? There's an old barbecue sauce that's expired. It's still there, right? There's always something in there. There's that kale that got pushed in the back drawer, deep in the back. Like, that's still there, right? But this was not the case. There was no condiments. There was no expired milk. There was no kale. It was absolutely empty. And I remember being hungry, sitting on the couch thinking like, I guess we're just going to bed hungry tonight. And in that moment, there being a knock on the door, and it's like, I thought it was Mayo, our next door neighbor, our Hawaiian next door neighbor who would occasionally stop by and ask to borrow money, which by the way, I let him borrow $20 once and never spoke to him ever again. Some of the best $20 I ever spent in my life. So I assumed it was Mayo because he would do this. He was the guy that came and told us the day we moved in that the resident before us had jumped off his balcony and taken his life. And it was like, awesome, thanks, so glad we got this apartment. Now I know why it was so cheap on Craigslist. Remember Craigslist? So I thought it was Mayo, so I opened up the door and it wasn't. I looked down and there's 3 paper bags that say Strachan Van Til on them, which was our local supermarket. I went and looked down the hall, no one was down there. I went and looked out my window, no one seemed to be outside. It just seemed like these groceries appeared in a time that I had no food. Again, you might think, wow, it's really cool. God gave you food. No, like I was hungry. I had nothing. There was not like, oh, I have to wait till morning. In morning, there was still going to be no food in that fridge. And God came through to me in a way that was tangible and real. A couple months later, we had gotten a Nissan Quest minivan, my absolute dream car. That's what tells you you're 25 years old with 3 children making $17,900 a year when a 8-year-old used Nissan Quest is your dream car. And it was. And we could go into how God provided that for us, but that was it. It was awesome, right? Just unbelievable. Until one day I was going to work and it kind of sputtered out and stopped and kind of coasted. It's like, that's weird. And you get out and pushed your car into the church parking lot where I was going. And it's this point of life when you realize, maybe looking back, you had problems where I was really good at pushing cars. Like, that's not something people are normally good at. Like, I knew the angles, I knew the leverage points, I could steer while I was pushing, I knew when to run around back and get some extra steam and then run back up front and steer. Like, this was one of those, right, that I had pulled it off, and I wasn't even embarrassed. I'd done it so many times, it's like, this is how it works, right? So I called up my mechanic, a guy named Chuck, and he came out, and he was looking at it while I was working, and he called me out and said, hey, I need you to come out and take a look, and I come out there, and he's like, I got bad news, Mike. Your timing chain came off, and it's wrecked your engine. He's like, the best I can tell, this is like a $3,000 fix. And so I tried to play it cool, right? And I was like, okay, like exactly 3 or like 31 or where are we looking, Knowing meanwhile I had 0, right? So if it would have been $30, it's out of my budget, right? But it's 3,000. It's like, okay, so 3. Okay. And he's like, yeah, maybe like 31. Okay, 31, cool, yeah, right. And I'm kind of playing it off. It was that moment where he walked away and I just kind of stood there in the middle of a church parking lot on a weekday, so not many other cars there, and thought like, whew, what am I going to do now? I remember getting a ride home and getting home and standing outside in my driveway, or standing kind of like we had a corner lot, and I had my friend Greg drop me off on the side of the house because I didn't want to go in yet. I was trying to like figure out how I wanted to play it, how I wanted to tell my wife that our car was dead. And that she knew and I knew we didn't have money to fix it. Right? I kind of paced around one thing. And as I was pacing around, a guy named John Cole called me, who, by the way, pastors down in Indiana right now, called me and was like, hey, Mike, I know we talked about this a while back. I need you to put a new air conditioner in my house. When can you do it? I was like, John, I will be there in the morning. And I had bid this out a long time back, and he worked the same church I did, so I knew he was in the same financial straits I was. And I did this the next day and called in work sick or personal day, whatever it was, and I fixed it, and boom, I had $700 in my pocket. While I'm finishing that job up, driving home, a man named Marion Toll calls me. Somebody who was a good friend of mine. He said, hey, Mike, I know we talked a while back, but like, it's fall, winter's coming. Like, can you come put that furnace in for me you were talking about? Absolutely, of course. And I get there, and he's like, hey, like, I know it's not really your thing, but can you do water heaters also? And it was like, I could do anything right now. Let me tell you, like, I will literally do anything. You need your gutters cleaned, your grass mowed, snow shoveled, like, you name it, I will do it. I walked away doing it. And as I remember the next day, like, walking home from that, a guy named John McCollum called me up. He said, hey, I just bid this job, and he also worked at the church, because we all did side gigs if you worked at the church, right? John called me up and was like, hey, I got this big plumbing job. It's going to take 2 days. Can you come help me do it, and I'll pay you well? And through the course of like 3 or 4 days, God gave me work after work after work after work, and I looked up about 5 days later and had almost to the dollar amount what I needed to repair my car. In those moments, God was as real to me as Tom sitting on the front row. Like, you couldn't convince me God was not real. He was there and he had provided for me. So how does that get to our lesson today? Bear with me. I know that was a long intro, but we're getting into it, and I promise we'll make up time here. I'm blaming Shane for too long of announcements if we go long. So I want to talk to you today about Joshua and Caleb, but to kind of understand Joshua and Caleb and the predicament they get themselves in, you have to kind of back up maybe 100 years or so to where God's people, the Israelites, are in captivity. They're prisoners, they're slaves, I should say, in the land of Egypt. Through a whole bunch of events that are just miraculous and amazing, God uses Moses to lead them away from the Pharaoh, out of bondage, right? And they immediately come to this Red Sea, this huge body of water that is impassable. And then they find out there's a cloud of dust behind them that the Egyptians have said, no, we decided we're not letting you go, and we're coming to get you. Immovable object, and the force is coming to get them, right? And Moses splits the Red Sea, and they cross on dry ground, and then the sea swallows up as the Egyptian army is in it, and like it's just this amazing, like just miraculous, like God-sized miracle. Now me, like God giving me money when I need it, God giving me food when I need it, you may be like, those aren't the same, Pastor Mike. They were to me. Like, be hungry sometime and have God give you food. And let me tell you, being hungry is just as bad as the Red Sea, right? So God brings them all the way out, and he brings them into the wilderness. And again, just miracle after miracle that we can't get into today because of time. But like, he leads them by a pillar of cloud by day, fire by night, telling them exactly where to go. He gives them food when they're hungry, gives them water when they're thirsty. Just miracle after miracle after miracle. He provides for them. He gets them all the way to the banks of the Jordan River, and they're just on this land that Moses has been telling them for months and months and months. Man, this is the promised land that God's given us. He didn't just bring us out to starve and to make by in the desert. He's got a promised land for us. Well, Moses sends 12 spies into this land of Canaan, this promised land that God has said, this is yours. They all come back with the same basic report. Man, this place is unbelievable. It's flowing with milk and honey. Now, if you grow up in America, you're not necessarily really excited by milk and honey, but grow up in the desert, starving, eating manna, what is translated basically as what is this, day after day after day, drinking water from the ground or water from a rock, milk and honey have to sound pretty good. All these spies, they say, man, it's amazing. However, the first 10 say, yeah, this land's amazing, but we might as well give up on it because this place is fortified unlike anything we've ever seen. And on top of it, they have warriors that are way more skilled than us. And on top of that, these warriors are huge. Like, they are giants. We shouldn't go. However, 2 of these spies, Joshua and Caleb, say, no, like, yeah, like, it's amazing. And these people are done, but like, if we just wipe out these giants, then it's ours. Like, we're done. It's over. And the rest of the people are like, no, we don't want to do it. We're too scared. Let's stay in the desert. Joshua and Caleb say, no, let's proceed. Well, God gets so frustrated at the people's lack of faith, he basically says, how about this? Anyone that doesn't think I can do it, you don't think the faith I to do it, your entire generation, you don't get what I had for you. You do not get the promised land. And now you're going to wander in circles in the desert for the next 40 years, basically until you all just die off. And once you're all dead, then I'll have Joshua, who has faith in me, lead you in. And that's kind of where we pick up our story. The children of Israel at the banks of Jordan, getting ready to cross to this land that they want to take, right? And that's kind of where our verses pick us up. Joshua 6 says, now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have given you Jericho in your hand with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all men of war going around the city once. Thou shalt you do for 6 days. And this is cool. So God tells them, hey, here's the plan, Joshua. You're going to walk around the city every day for 6 days. It's going to be great. So here's where I'm going to put everybody in the room into kind of six groups. I think all of you are going to fall into one of these, if not perhaps a couple. I think that first group is, I want to see it for myself, right? Philippians 4:19 says, my God shall supply all my needs according to his riches and mercy, right? However, many of you, if you're under the age of 18 or maybe under the age of 25, for the most part in your life, maybe God hasn't supplied your needs, but maybe mom and dad supplied your needs, right? I think of that for my children here. Like Lex and Max and Nick's, Lex around the camera back there, so if it's shaky, you know who to blame. They might remember a little bit of our struggle 10, 15 years ago. My youngest two will never know that struggle. Lex and Max might remember God providing for us, but I don't know if Xenia and Trax have ever seen that. Maybe God has never provided for them in their life. Maybe I have done all the providing. Some of you, maybe that's you. I want to see it for myself. Joshua tells people, hey, we're going to take Jericho. Here's the plan. Some of you in this room, if you've never seen God work, man, let that be your prayer today. See it for yourself. Put yourself in a position where you have to see God for yourself. Don't just take my word. Don't take Pastor Evan's word. Don't take Pastor Shane's word. See it for yourself. That's our first group. Our second group, maybe you're comfortable in the desert group. Keep in mind, these people going to take the land don't know of the miracles that God did that brought them out of slavery. They have never known the bonds of addiction. They've never known the bonds and the shackles of, I'm trapped here. They don't know what it's like to see an army coming down, you're breathing down your neck, and a body of water in front of you, and you don't know what to do when you see God split that sea. They've never known. Some of you, maybe this is your today, you're like, man, there's some big giants in that land. I know they got milk and honey, but I'm good here in the desert. I got manna, I got water. I'm good. And I think that's where a lot of us, we're stuck today. We've got an okay life. We're doing fine. And God's like, no, I don't want okay for you. I don't want fine for you. I want the promised land. I want milk and honey for you. And we're like, no, I got really good at making fires. I got really good at camping. I'm really good at moving these tents every day. Folks, let's not be in that group today, right? Don't be happy with the situation you have. Don't settle for what you have if you know God has something bigger for you. Amen. Our third group is the group that I'd call the men of war. The Bible tells us a little farther down in Joshua where he says, you shall march around the city, all men of war, going around the city once, thus shall you do it for 6 days. He specifically says, the men of war. So I've got a couple props here, and they're used to teaching the youth every week. You got to have props, or you lose kids pretty quick. Well, I think some of these people were undoubtedly men of war. The Bible tells us multiple times in Joshua they weren't just men of war, but they were armed men of war. And he gets this group together, these men of war, and he's like, all right, here's the plan. And I imagine they all gather, and all right, Joshua, give it to us. I imagine they got their faces painted. They're William Wallace ready to go. Give me freedom. Let me at them. I'm armed. I've been waiting for years to do this. Come on now, let's go. And Joshua's like, here's the plan. We're going to walk around the city. And they're like, no. Maybe you're talking to the people, but I'm the armed man of war. Joshua's like, yeah, I know who you are. Here, we're gonna walk around the city. And they do it. They walk around the city all the way around, say nothing, do nothing, and they just walk around the city. And they gather the second day. The second day, here's your men of war again. They're coming. They're ready. They got their battle weapons in hand. And they're like, yeah, bring it on. Let me at him, Jericho. What do you got? Ready to go. Daniel's like, all right. Or Joshua, rather, excuse me. He's like, I got it. Here's the plan. We're going to walk around the city. It's like, they're like, hey, watch me chuck one of these, Joshua. Maybe you don't know, like, what I got, right? Like, come on, right? And he's like, yeah, we're going to walk around the city. Day 3, what's the plan? Walk around the city. Day 4, day 5, day 6, men of war. The Bible makes specific point. They're armed men of war. Let's go. Let's walk around the wall. Some of you today, like, that might be you. You might describe yourself like, that's me. God has equipped me. He's armed me. I'm ready to go. I'm a man of war. Bring it on. But God's just going to ask you to walk right now. I've been to Bible college. I've been to seminary. God's given me a word I want to speak. Pastor Evan, where am I at? What's my job? And it's like, cool, I need you to set up signs in the parking lot before everyone gets here to church Sunday morning. Oh, but here, Pastor Evan, I have a teaching degree. I'm filled. I'm using it. I've got weapons. I'm ready to go. Like, bring it on. Oh, man, that's so great. I need you to do kids check-in. Well, that's what Joshua has asked his men of war to do. It makes a point to say they are armed men of war. Walk around the wall. Some of you have been walking for a long time. Just walking, knowing that you're a person of war. I think there's times where I felt like I have fit into this. I felt like God has tooled me and given me these things to do, and I come to church, I'm ready to go. And Pastor Evan's like, go down to the basement where nobody can see you and teach little kids that aren't going to remember what you say for an hour every week. And it's like, no. I was a split major. It was secondary education and pastoral theology, Pastor Evan. Maybe I didn't, maybe you got confused, Maybe you understand, Pastor Evan, that, man, I'm a man of war. Like, I want to chop up the devil. Let me at him. Fee, fi, fo, fum. Give me the blood of a Philistine bum, Let me at it. You're armed, you're ready to go. And Pastor Evan said, man, I'm so glad you're here. Cool. You know a trade, you just, oh man, so awesome. I need you to join the team where you mow the lawn on Saturdays for me. That is sometimes what God has for us. Sometimes it's not going to make sense. We're going to be prepared. We're ready to go. And our marching orders will be for a season. I need you to walk around the wall. This fifth group of people is, I'd say, you are the fourth group, you're the priest blowing the trumpet. The Bible says in Joshua, 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. And on the 7th day, you're to march around the city 7 times. And the priest shall blow the trumpets. And the armed men walking before them, and the priests were blowing the trumpets in the rear, and he was walking after the ark while the trumpets blew continually. Maybe some of you, you've got the ram's horn, which I bought on Amazon, and I will not attempt to blow into today because it's unbelievably harder than it looks to make a sound out of this. Which, for some reason, Kendra can do it amazingly, but I struggle. Some of you, this is you. You are the priest of the group. You feel like with all your heart, God has made you to hear from him, and you're gifted in giving that word to other people. Like when I thought of this, I thought of like Shane immediately. Like Shane, I feel like you probably feel also that God has given you an ability to get that word from him and just deliver it to the people. God said, hey, Levites, I need you. Like, okay, like priest, you want me to give a charge? Let me tell you what, I got a word from God that I want to give today. I want to bring it on. He's like, yeah, I need you to get that trumpet and just blow it really hard. And don't stop blowing it. We're going to walk all the way around the city and you can't stop blowing it. Some of you, that's you. You've been gifted. You know this is your gift, but God's just like, no, I need you to just blow the trumpet. Some of you in this room, like for the season, even though you know God's gifted you and you have a word, God's telling you, I just need you to use the voice in your lung to blow the trumpet. Our fifth group, I thought they'd fall by now. The Bible says in the Lord said to Joshua, you have seen Jericho into your hand, giving them the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city of the men of war, going around city once, thus you'll do for 6 days. But Joshua commanded the people, you shall not shout or make a voice heard, neither shall any word go out of your mouth until the day I tell you to shout. Something I think is interesting about this is it tells us in the beginning of those verses that the Lord tells Joshua the whole plan. Then you hear later in the verse, Joshua addresses the people, except for I don't see Joshua give the people the whole plan. The best I can tell, he says, just walk around the wall and I'll tell you when. Right? In fact, he literally in the last verse there says, until the day I tell you to shout. He literally gives them a signal. Hey, we're just going to march. This is day 7. we're all going to walk around the wall until I give you the signal. Like, you don't give somebody a signal if you already know the plan going in. Some of you might think, man, I've been walking around this wall for a long time. Like, that's fine. I'm a man of war. I'm the priest. I've put off what I do, but man, I've been walking for a long time. Let me tell you, church, the walls are gonna come down. It's gonna be epic. They're gonna crumble before you. The ground beneath your feet is gonna shake, and it's gonna be amazing, but you're never gonna see it if you stop walking. God's got the promised land for you. He's got it. It's there, and it's amazing. It's flowing with milk and honey. It's yours. You just gotta keep walking. I don't know, it might be another lap, it might be 2 more, but you gotta keep walking because the walls are gonna come and you're never gonna see it if you stop walking now. I think some of you are so close. You're right there. You're about to claim what God has for you. Don't stop walking now. And that last group, I would call it the do it again people. The song we started with today was Do It Again. It starts with the words, we're walking around this wall, I thought by now they'd fall. I think this group would be to maybe the Caleb in the room. You are one of the few that you have seen God use you. You have seen God's miracles in the past, and they've been amazing. But man, maybe it's just been a long time. I think that's maybe how I am sometimes. Man, I don't know, God hasn't set my groceries outside of my door in a long time. It's been a while. I haven't had to pray for work in a long time. Maybe I'm the Caleb here. Maybe God's called me to follow the Joshua in my life, and he's given me the city. It's over there, and like there's other people around that are confused, the younger generation, that they're not always so sure about this. You've seen it. Think about it yourself. Have you seen God work in your life? Have you had an impassable body of water, an impassable object before you that you're like, there's no way. I'm stuck, right? There's no gas in my truck and no money in my account to put gas in my truck. There's no engine in my car, no money in my account to put an engine in my car. There's no groceries in my fridge, and there's no money to put grocery in my fridge. And God has provided those things for you. And like me, maybe you've seen God, and it's like, I could reach out and touch him. He was so real. But maybe it's just been a long time. Let it be your prayer today. God, do it again. Let me tell you, this younger generation that's going to fill these front couple rows next service to hear their youth pastor speak, they might be in this category. I wanted to see it for myself, but they need you, Caleb. I want to do it again. Let that be your prayer today. Men of war, you priests, that you're ready, you're equipped for something greater than it is. Don't stop walking. Don't stop blowing that trumpet. God's going to use you. There's going to be a time. The walls are going to come down. You Calebs, let it be your prayer today. Do it again. God, do it again. God, do it again. Some of you, that might mean God has to put you in a position where you don't know the way out. That's a scary prayer. Pastor Evan said last week, talking about Jonah, if you haven't been challenged by God, or God hasn't asked you to do something hard in a long time, maybe you're not listening. Man, like I felt that. On the second row, it was like he might have like plunged a dart into my heart. It's like, man, I don't know if I've seen God for a while. I've been walking around this desert, but I got a group of 30 or so youth that they need me to lead them in doing this again. Bow your heads here. Pray with me. I don't know what group you fall in today. Maybe you've never seen it and you're like, I need to see it today, God. Maybe you're the person where it's like, man, I've just been stuck in this desert and I've gotten really just content in this desert. I'm safe, I'm fine, I'm okay. But man, this is not the victorious promised land that I know in my heart God has promised me. Some of you, you're the men of war, you're armed. You've been to seminary, you've got your degrees, your bachelor's, your doctorates. You're ready to go, you're equipped, you know a trade, you know a skill, you're ready to go. Maybe you're in the fact that you know that God's asked you to deliver his word. You don't feel like your job right now is doing that. Or maybe you're the one that you've just been walking for a long time. Your feet are tired, you're sore, your back hurts, your throat's dry. Maybe you're the one that you've seen it. You're the Caleb here. You're the only one of your friend group that's seen God. Let it be your prayer. Do it again. Whatever it is your prayer, say it to yourself now.